I spend my summers up in the Appalachians, staying with my grandparents in a cabin that's miles from the nearest paved road. They've lived there their whole lives. They know these woods better than anyone. But there is one place they never go. About 5 miles north of our property, there's a large clearing. It's overgrown now, choked with weeds and thorns, but if you look closely, you can still see the blackened bricks of old chimneys rising out of the dirt like tombstones. It's a dead place. Even the birds don't sing there. When I was a kid, I kept pestering my grandpa about it. Finally, he sat me down on the porch, lit his pipe, and told me the truth. That used to be Blackwood Creek, he said. About 20 houses, good people, until the winter of '74. Back then, the town was isolated. They lived off the land, but the woods around them were thick, ancient, and hungry. Wolves, bears, and things that didn't have names. The mayor was a man named Thomas. He was a good man, a strong leader. He had a little daughter, Sarah, 7 years old, bright as a button. One evening, Sarah was playing near the tree line. Her mother had told her 1,000 times, never go into the deep woods. But kids are kids. When the sun went down, Sarah didn't come home to dinner. The whole town mobilized. Men grabbed their rifles and flashlights. They combed the forest for 3 days straight. They shot every wolf they saw, skinning 'em in a rage, looking for signs. On the 4th day, they found her, or what was left of her. Her little blue dress, torn to shreds and soaked in blood. A patch of hair ripped from the scalp. There was no body, just the gruesome evidence of a violent end. The mayor, Thomas, went insane with grief. When they brought him the dress, he didn't cry. He just sat on his porch, staring into the trees. He stopped eating, stopped speaking. 3 days later, they found him in his barn. He had hanged himself from the rafters. They buried him quickly outside the church cemetery, by the roadside. Suicides weren't allowed in consecrated ground back then. They thought the tragedy was over. But on the 9th night after his death, the horror truly began. It started with sounds. The villagers locked their doors and shuttered their windows as soon as the sun dipped below the peaks. Nobody went out at night, not even to the outhouse, because something was walking the streets. People heard heavy, wet footsteps thumping on their roofs. They heard scratching at their doors, long, slow scratches like metal on wood, and sometimes heavy breathing down the chimney. It wasn't a bear. Bears don't try to turn doorknobs. And then came the screams. Late at night, a voice would howl from the darkness. It sounded like a man in agony, but distorted, guttural. It sounded like it was coming from the grave. "Let me in," it would moan. "I'm cold." The voice sounded exactly like Thomas, the dead mayor. For 2 weeks, the terror grew. The villagers knew what it was. It was a revenant, a restless spirit in a dead body. Thomas had died in despair, and something evil had taken residence in his corpse. But nobody dared to go out. They prayed, they put salt on their windowsills, and they waited for morning. Until the night
it escalated. My grandma was asleep when she heard a chaotic noise outside, screams, gunshots. People were running out of their houses, forgetting their fear to help a neighbor. Grandma grabbed a lantern and ran out. The chaos was coming from the edge of the woods near Old Man Miller's house. Miller was a war vet, a tough guy who had seen combat. When Grandma got there, a crowd had gathered. Old Man Miller was lying on the ground. He had survived 2 wars, but he didn't survive this. His throat had been torn out. His face, half of it was bitten off. But the worst part was the sound coming from the darkness. "Lily, where is Lily?" a mother was screaming. Lily was Miller's granddaughter. She was 6. Her bed was empty. The window was smashed from the outside. Suddenly, a woman in the crowd screamed and pointed toward the meadow. "There! Look!" The moon broke through the clouds, illuminating the field, and everyone saw it. Running across the field toward the tree line was a creature. It was pale, naked, and impossibly tall. It ran on 2 legs, but with a hunched, jerky motion, stumbling and twitching like a broken marionette. It had long, matted hair covering its face, and in its arms it was clutching a small, limp body. Lily. The creature turned its head to look back at the mob. Grandma said she would never forget that face. It was Thomas, but it wasn't. The jaw was unhinged, hanging loose on his chest. The eyes were milk white, glowing with a feral animal hate. The skin was gray and rotten. It let out a shriek that sounded like grinding metal and then vanished into the trees with the child. Grandma fainted, but the men of the town didn't. They didn't wait for the police. They didn't wait for dawn. Filled with a rage that outweighed their fear, they grabbed gasoline cans, torches, and axes. They marched to the roadside grave where they had buried the mayor. The earth was disturbed. There was a tunnel dug out of the grave. They tracked the creature to a cave nearby. I won't tell you the details of what they found inside, but they found Lily. It was too late for her. They found the creature sleeping, bloated and covered in blood. They didn't shoot it. Bullets might not work on the undead. They collapsed the cave entrance and poured 50 gallons of gasoline down the air vents. They burnt it. They burnt it until the rocks cracked from the heat. And then they went back to Blackwood Creek. They packed their essentials and they set fire to their own homes. They burnt the church, the school, the houses. They wanted to cleanse the land. They wanted to make sure that whatever curse had taken root there was turned to ash. That's why the town isn't on the map anymore. That's why you see that scorched earth on Google Earth. My grandpa finished his story and looked at me with dead, serious eyes. "The woods remember," he said. "We killed the body, but I don't think we killed the hunger. Never go to that clearing, boy. The soil is sour." So, if you're ever hiking in the Appalachians and you find a brick chimney standing alone in the woods, turn around. Run, and don't look back.